Hey guys, it's Chris from the Ultimate Recycler. Welcome to the workshop. This video is going to start out as a repair video. I don't know where it's going to end because I'm just starting. I have a vacuum cleaner here that was dropped in the shop by a gentleman that said it's fairly new, but when he plugged it in, it was getting very hot and smelt funny. So he just gave it to me and went and bought another one. It's an Anko brand, so it's a cheap brand, sold through Kmart and I think Target. So it's just a basic vacuum cleaner. It's a bagless one. And I have all the fittings and everything. And seriously, it does look new. I have no idea why he didn't take it back under some sort of warranty and say, here, take this, give me another one. But I thought it'd be a good chance to, well, A, see if we can fix it, but probably more importantly, see what went wrong, have a look inside and see how cheaply they are made. We'll plug it in first and show you what it's doing. I don't know if it sounds different or whether it just smells after a while, in which case you'll have to trust my reporting on that. But if it's doing something weird, we'll have a look and then we'll pull it apart and see why, and see if either we can fix it or why it isn't fixable. Probably isn't worth the time because these things brand new were only about $100. But it's worth our while having a look, and if we can save it from going to e-waste, then all the better. Okay, first things first, let's plug it in and see what it actually does or doesn't do. I gather it still works because he said it was making a smell. He didn't say it didn't turn on, so let's plug it into the appliance tester. And I'm wearing my mic, which is closer to the vacuum than the camera is, so hopefully we can hear if it does something weird. We'll power it up, and I think we can just turn it on. Oh yes, I can definitely smell a burning type smell, and I don't know if you could hear that. Initially it sounded all right, but there was a burbling like like you would like sparking on a on the brushes or something. I don't know. There's certainly something wrong with it, and I can certainly smell it. So I understand why he went and bought another one. I don't understand why he didn't take it back, but anyway, maybe it was longer than 12 months and it just hasn't been used. But yes, I can certainly hear something going strange in there. Didn't even get a chance to look at my appliance tester, but that doesn't really matter. Right, how do we get into it? I think I'll put a towel on the bench first so we don't scratch it up too much, just in case we can save it. Now, I guess we can take the canister part off. How does that open? There, we'll get all that out of the road. It's still got some fluff in here. Now, we need to clearly get into the motor. And I don't know if they're designed for easy service. I would expect not, because I think even the manufacturers don't want you to fix them. They just want to sell you another one. So I can see some Phillips head screws in here. So I think this whole cover here will come off. So let's, that's retracting because the thing's resting on the button. All right, let's pull those screws out. They don't appear to be security screws. Okay, just self-tappers. Okay, is that all there is to it? This is going to have the cord retractor in there too. Let's take the filter out. There might be another screw behind here. Certainly hasn't done much work. Oh, maybe the top cover comes off. Maybe the bottom stays intact and the top cover comes off. So we have some more screws here. They're all the same length. There's a little filter there as well. It looks like another screw in here. Okay, now how are we going to go? All right, I think we're getting somewhere. There we go. That actually wasn't too bad. So far, so good. All right, so we haven't interfered with the cord retractor. The motor's under there. We have a little control panel here. Motor controller. Little dusty. So a few screws here will probably take the motor out, but let's try and run it now I think we should be able to. And see what happens while we've got the cover off. Alright, now this was the switch. Right, I think the problem is definitely in the motor. Oh, I don't know if you could pick that up on the camera, but that actually made the shed lights flicker. It does say pass on my appliance tester. But yeah, there's some serious arcing going on, so I'm going to have to take the motor out. Let's unplug it. That retracts the cord so that still works there. I don't want the spring on the cord retract thing to go flying. I think that mechanism might come out. No, we might be able to leave that there. We can take the little trip thing off. Now those screws are a bit shorter than the other ones, so I need to keep them separate. I think that has to all stay together. Alright, we might be able to leave that there. Let's try and take the top cover off the motor. They're longer screws. I can't get to the other screw. Maybe this does have to come out. I think that will slip out of there. There we go. We can unwind that a little bit and keep it out of the road. We can unplug the mains wires. Okay, the live, or the brown one went to the top. All right, we'll leave that there out of the road. Now I can get to this screw. And will the top cover come off with the little control board? So that looks okay at this stage. Have a little sealing rubber there. Now the whole motor will lift out, but the wires go in from underneath. So we better take the lower cover out. Alright, that'll lift the whole motor out. Okay, so on the whole, that wasn't actually too bad to get into. I've still got the cord going through there. That looks like some sort of cushioning. There's a cable tie that's been melted. That's interesting. And there's just a mat. It's just a cushioning mat for the motor to sit on. It's not a filter. A bit dusty in there. But that cable tie has been melted. Okay, that must have come off from underneath somewhere. What are we going to find under here? Okay, everything looks all right on that part. Lift this gasket up here and get some flexibility in these wires. That can come right out, that little gasket. Now the wires don't unplug, they're soldered directly into the board. That's okay. We can at least get to the bottom of the motor here. Alright, I can't see anything melted. It does smell like it's been hot though. That burnt smell for sure. Alright, I'm looking into the commutator and it's looking quite blue, as if it's been very hot. Well, we can unplug this. Okay, we're gonna, both wires are blue. I'm gonna mark which one goes on which side though. I'll just get a texter. Probably doesn't matter at all, but I always like to return things exactly the way they were. So a black mark on the blue wire, black mark on the motor. Take this one off. Okay, now we can move this out of the road. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. We need to have a look at the brushes in this motor. I'll move the camera a bit closer. Okay, I want to get the brushes out. I'm not exactly sure how they come out. We do have a wire going straight into the windings off here. I'll undo this screw and see if the assembly comes off. Yeah, what does that allow us to do? Not much. Will that terminal push through there? Looks like it will, but I don't want to pull the wire off the windings inside. There we go. That's got that one out of the road. They usually unclip. Oh, I think we've probably got to fold these tabs up. They wouldn't be designed to be replaced all the time. No one's going to keep a $100 vacuum cleaner from Kmart for years and replace the brushes more than once. Okay, I didn't have to take that other one out. That should pull the brush through. Oh, it's probably easier to take it anyway. Alright, the brushes are very long, so that should be fine. Oh, it's very, very rough, that end, but the brushes are plenty long enough. So I don't think there's any issue with that. But it looks like it's been very hot on the commutator. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see in there. Been quite hot. Unless that's normal for these cheap motors. Hang on, we've got another cable tie in here that's melted. Maybe the windings, I reckon the motor windings might have had a short and they're just getting a lot hotter. I don't think the problem is in the brushes. Because here we have another cable tie that has melted. Now the cable ties look like they went round the actual windings, the outer windings, not the armature, but the outer. Are they the field windings? I reckon we need to pull the armature out and have a look in there. How are we going to do that? Alright, I think this has got beyond a repair job and now it's a post-mortem to see exactly what happened, because the motor's obviously got more issues than is easily fixable. I don't think that's folded over. We can't even get that off unless it taps off. Oh, maybe that's pressed on. We might be able to tap it off. There we go. And we'll need to take the little fan off and then the shroud at the back of it. Okay, back to this job after a couple of days, and I'll see if I can get this loose. Usually you can give it a bit of a jar. There we go, just took one hit. So now I can remove the nut and take the fan off. And then, there's two screws that hold that shroud thing on. So it's a bit to get into this motor. Now that just comes off. Right, now we get a look at the windings. And if we take this bracket off, we should be able to at least pull the armature out of the middle of it. Now, how easy will this come off? I guess the bearing's been pressed on. Now we still have one of the brushes onto the commutator, so we better release that or we're going to damage it. It's probably not going to matter. I don't think this is going to be worth putting back together. So I think we should be able to pull this cap off and slide the brush right out, which I probably should have done on the other side. Okay, well let's release it back off the commutator anyway. Now will this come out? And the bearing's probably pressed in the other end, so I might have to give it a bit of a tap with a punch. I think we might have to sit that up on something and give it a hit down. Okay, a couple of bits of wood there, and we'll try and give this a punch through now. That's going. There we go. So This is the armature with the commutator, and whilst it looks like it has been hot, it doesn't look damaged. So I think that part of the motor is okay, and the bearing feels good. But as we saw earlier, I think these field windings have been hot enough to melt something. Oh, what's going on in there? I think there's another cable tie in there that's melted. Now, I'm not sure if we're able to get the windings assembly out of this casing. It'd be nice to do that, to have a look. But yeah, it's certainly got some problems with the windings which won't be fixable, at least not viably fixable. So I might punch it out and we can have a better look at it then. Not sure how easy it's going to be to get out, but given that we're not really going to put it back together, it doesn't matter if we damage things a bit now. Yeah, it's sliding out that way. Okay, there we go. We've pulled the wire off one of the brass thingos, probably because it was trying to take the brush with it. I think we'll just snip that off. We're not going to put this one back together. Okay, there we have it. More melted cable ties. It looks like we had a wire here that got very hot. Now that was where, what is in here? Is that a thermal fuse or something? There's some component in there that these cable ties held, and it got hot enough to melt all the cable ties. It must have been, something must have been arcing because it's quite black in here from carbon. So there's some issue with it. I don't know that it was these field windings. I think it was this component that wasn't, it certainly melted that. Look, the cable tie has fused itself there. So I've seen enough in here now. We'll just see if this actually is copper, given that they make a lot of motors and transformers out of aluminium nowadays. And that's absolutely shiny silver, so that's not even a copper motor, it's an aluminium motor. Maybe that has something to do with it. They're just not lasting like they used to. Even though that looks like copper, it's actually an aluminium motor. As far as the commutator goes, I think that would be copper. Yes, so that's actually copper. So it's just the outer field windings that are aluminium. But all the same, it's going in my scrap electric motor bin, because scrapyards pay a price for electric motors, and that's an electric motor. And I'm sure they build in to their price the fact that some of the modern ones are actually aluminium and not copper, but there is some copper in there. There's also copper in these commutator tabs, so there's a fair bit of copper to be salvaged. But anyway, that's where this one's going, to recycling. The extra little bits, I could have thrown the whole lot in as electric motor. I'm not going to put it back together just purely to do that. So these can just go in pressing steel. Our little fan here is mostly aluminium, I think. Yeah, so that can all go in our aluminium bin. They can just go in the rubbish bin. We have a bit of hardware, and we have a vacuum cleaner now without a motor. I wonder if we can buy a replacement motor and whether it will be viable to put a replacement motor in the vacuum. Okay, back to this vacuum. I have just assembled it very quickly, not with the motor or anything, and I've salvaged any scrap value I can get out of it. I didn't even put any screws back in. It just kind of clipped together, which means I can take it to the e-waste crates out at the transfer station, and they will get something out of it. I did speak to the guy who collects e-waste one time, and as he was picking up the crates, he said they have ways to get rid of the casing, and hopefully a lot of the ABS plastic is recycled, whereas I can't put ABS plastic in our curbside recycle bins. If I just had to get rid of this without sending it to e-waste, it would have to go to landfill. So he's hoping they can recycle some of that. I've salvaged some little bits out of it to make it worthwhile. Now, I finished the last section by saying, is it possible, I wonder, to buy a replacement motor? That was a few days ago. It's taken me a week to get through this video just on when I have a little bit of time available. There's so much else going on here at the moment. I checked out the price of just a generic cheap Chinese made vacuum motor. I found them as cheap. One 1200 watt one was down to about $19, but then there was nearly $30 postage. That was through AliExpress. I could buy some through eBay, but I couldn't really get any for under about $50. This is a 2400 watt motor, not a 1200 as well. So to spend $50 on this vacuum plus my time, and then it's still a second-hand vacuum with really no warranty, and you can buy them brand new for just under 100. It's not viable for me to try and do, and I would suspect that if I did put a new motor in it, polish it up, take it to the shop, I think $50 would be a bit of a stretch. People just wouldn't spend that on a second-hand vacuum. Even though it has all the bits, it looks pretty good. It still has been used, and you know, even with a new motor, it's just, and the time of course to put it all back together. So unfortunately, these cheap vacuums, when I get them, I'll just be scrapping them. I'll show you what sort of scrap I get, and when I say scrapping them, I won't be pulling the motor out, because we'll weigh this up in a minute and see what it's worth. All I'll be doing with vacuums is chopping the cord off it, and then the rest of it's just going to e-waste. And hopefully, as I said, they can salvage the plastic and some of the other parts. They will, of course, sell the motor. I'm not going to the trouble of getting that out. I did wonder if it was worth keeping the filter, because it looks pretty good, but who's going to replace a filter on a cheap vacuum? No one ever services these. People just, when they blow up like this one did, they essentially throw them out. No one's going to want a second-hand filter, so it's just going to be clipped back in here, and the e-waste people can process all that as best they can. What did I get? Well, I got the motor. Let's weigh that up. It weighs almost a kilo. If I had have left it in the casing, it would have been a kilo. I'm not going to put it back in the casing. This can just go for pressing steel. So almost a kilo. That's about $1.20 or something for scrap. A little bit of aluminium that I'm not even going to weigh because it barely weighs anything. I did salvage the switch. The switch works okay, and I do have a box of switches at the shop just for a couple of dollars each, and it's amazing how many of those I sell. So I'll get $2 back on the switch. A little bit of hardware you can't see down here, but there's just some screws and some of the big washers and things. And of course the wire, which we'll weigh up in a second. There was also some other bits of wire from out of the vacuum, and that's probably our best value other than the switch. Oh, maybe not. Maybe the motor might beat it. Bit hard to weigh that, it keeps falling off, but I think it's about 1/3 of a kilo. At the moment I'm getting about $5 a kilo for insulated copper wire. So what's that, about not quite $2, so it's probably worth a little bit more than the motor. So we might have about $5 return from scrap plus a bit of hardware. It was worth having a look to see if we could fix it. The autopsy revealed, as you saw, something wrong with the field coil windings. Whether it's because they used aluminium wire and it had to be soldered to the copper, that there was a spot that got hot, whether it was something to do with that little component that I'm still not sure what that was, whether it was some sort of thermal fuse or a cutout or something, but ultimately it wasn't protecting anything, or whether it was actually the brushes just arcing a lot, because the commutator is quite blue and the brushes are very rough on the end. I'm not going to save them. I'm never going to have a motor that's going to take this size. So that can just go for scrap. That can go to e-waste. I've got to clear the bench off, more to do. That finishes the autopsy on the Cheap Anko Vacuum Cleaner. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found it interesting, even if you're not into scrapping at all and you just wanted to see what is inside a vacuum cleaner. But it goes to show with these cheaper ones, it's just really not worth trying to do anything with them. By the time I get these cheaper vacuums in the shop, generally they're very scruffy. They look very secondhand. Sometimes half of the fittings are missing, and it's just impossible to sell it, even if it's in good going order, which is a shame. If it was a better vacuum, a quality brand, worth a lot of money to buy new, this job would have been worth buying a new motor for. There are plenty of motors available on eBay, AliExpress, all other spots on the net, and they're relatively cheap if you've got a vacuum that's worth it. But when you've got such a budget vacuum in the first place, it's just not worth buying one. So there we go. That's my take. That's my attempted repair that turned into a post-mortem or an autopsy, and I've got a little bit of scrap out of it. So I'm going to clear my bench off and get on to something else. I'll be pleased to get this done after a week. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.